What do neurodiversity, psychedelics, Kuramoto oscillator physics, uh, love, Jesus, and metronomes or fireflies have to do with each other? Also, the quest of individuation. What could all of those possibly have in common? Could it be the same thing that Kuramoto described in 1975, the decentralized harmony of oscillatory mechanics? Could it be that the statement that I and the Father are one is the same thing that explains why so many neurodivergent people feel they need to mask in a world that doesn't see or accept them or allow for their type of, whatever frequency you could say? And the states that people touch in psychedelics, those moments that go on forever, where it's like, I feel like I'm touching God or I've become God even more closely. In those states, could that be better explained by the same thing that makes fireflies and metronomes turn on together? At least more simply, with less delay, explained in a manner that points directly to the moon, or directly to say, oh yeah, it's just synchrony. It's just, and what is synchrony in the human being but presence, right? And so I'm not talking about mystical things, this type of magic does not break simple physics. This is what synchrony is when it's realized in consciousness. And like you always hear me say, what Plato said a long time ago, we're not experiencing reality for what it is, and people are like prisoners in a cave who don't know what the sunlight is outside the cave, but are instead seeing the shadows on the wall and thinking that they're seeing what reality really is. What did he mean by that? Is that like a cool philosophy 101, thing? I wonder what he could mean by that. I wonder why fireflies time sync and turn on all together at once without traditional communication, or birds in the murmuration fly together, or spiral activation in the heart, or spiraling galaxies. Everything you've always heard me say again and again for those who have watched my videos. But I really want to emphasize it's from the top of reality to the bottom, to a tiny little petri dish. So if we really realize what that is that Ember, you sound like you know a lot of the Kuramoto mathematics, or you know a lot of the, like whatever physics, can you show me the textbook that I could read? And I'm like, no, 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 no. When Jesus said, I and the Father are one, he's saying, my node, my being, is synchronous with the field of reality. In the terms closer to the oscillator mechanics, when there's a bunch of nodes, like if my body's comprised of as above, so below, like the little, you can almost say cells in a larger body, but even more specifically, the rhythmic coherence of my vibrational system as not a discrete object in reality, but part of the inextricable unfolding rhythm. If we take that and say, my nodes are in the shared entrainment with the field of reality, got it? The field of reality is sending me a volley in this dance of reflection that is the one became many, that I may know myself at the highest level of the cosmos. But in my little rhythm that I call Ember, that rhythm is trying to find synchrony with reality, just like the birds, just like the fireflies, just like the metronomes. And when that synchrony is achieved, it's not, I am Ember, the mythical, whatever, druid of whatever, or whatever it is, whatever title you want to throw on it. It's more like, I'm here. I'm really, really here. Like, really here. Almost like before, my brain was like this temporally broken place where like I couldn't basically dance on the dance floor. I'd try to dance and I'd either get too shy and loop into my head into self-anxiety or estrangement from reality, or like do like a sort of broken attempt to like sort of force in a frictionful way what the dance of consciousness in relation to reality is. And so now, when you go back to I and the Father are one, it's like, Jesus didn't know oscillatory mechanics, and I didn't learn this from looking at a framework. I learned it because if I didn't jump off the mattresses, like in my Princess and the Pea example, if I didn't remove all the delay layers, I was gonna die in this life. Because as a trans woman, in the environment that I was in, it wasn't gonna allow me to make it. I needed to burn all the delay layers to find what was underneath. And what did I find underneath? What was my quest of an individuation? Was it my whole life I secretly desired to be a woman? No, it was actually much more subtle than that. It was, I followed a signal. The signal was presence. The signal was synchrony. The signal was the same thing Kuramoto noticed when he said decentralized harmony is a wondrous thing because there's no central actor, and yet all the birds fly together. All the fireflies turn on together in the phase coherence. When the phase dynamics reach that point of coherence, that's what your system's trying to do when it trying to, sync with reality. And that's what we call presence. Those are those moments in the psychedelic, or when your baby was born, or when you're making love to someone that you love and you feel it all the way down and you say, if only what it was to be a child again and feel this like I did every day, where I was just synchronous reality and exactly who I was. And who I was wasn't who they told me to be, who my parents thought I was, who my family needed me to be, who my job needs me to be, or I can only be this person in this arena and that person in that arena. No, it's who I am when I dissolve all delay. It's who I am when I let this reality synchronize with me. And what is that? Again, it's not I'm a superhero, it's I'm present. I'm feeling love as structure all the way down. And what is feeling it all the way down? But being present in each moment. And then ask yourself, are you present? Are the people around you present? Like, really, tune into it. Are they here? Tune in, turn on, drop out. Drop out of the symbolic recursion that is trapping us in a certain structure, right? The structure is delay. Think about what I'm saying. The dance floor, synchronous dance equals presence. Stuttered dance, fearful dance equals there's a delay, because every time I try to synchronize with reality, I wedge something. What my father would have said, what my job wants, what the framework allows for. Those are things that exist like a shadow on the wall. And what is the shadow? It's not a cool philosophical idea. It's you literally being delayed from a synchronous dance with reality. And the way you can judge it, are you present? Did you just spend a whole day stressing out in a temporally broken state of mind, here and there, tomorrow, the schedule, the thing you're gonna make for dinner, constantly to a point where you can never dance on the dance floor? That you can't actually just forget about it and just dance, you know what I mean? And then the question is, do you become like a monotonous robot where you don't have any thoughts? No, actually you discover yourself. And I'm here to tell you, because it saved my life. You discover yourself. Why? Because that's the last recursive flint, just like you're in the Matrix. And you're like, I don't know if I can jump off this building, even though I know the shadows on the wall are just shadows. I'm not sure I could jump off this building. And I'm not saying jump off a building. Listen to what I'm saying. This is a description of oscillatory rhythmic harmony at the most precise level. And before you're in rhythmic harmony, when you're in desynchronized areas, when the little birds inside of you aren't flying like a murmuration, but they're a little off, there's always a wedge between, what is the shared vibratory surface, and doesn't allow for shared entrainment, doesn't allow for syncing. It's almost like you're a DJ and there's like some noise in your headphones and you just can't get it actually synced up. You can try, and in those little moments, in the psychedelic, in the birth of your baby, in your wedding day, you can feel it for a moment and you're like, oh my God, this is holy. That was one of the best days of my life. Because I felt it all the way down. It was so impactful that I felt what the sacred was. It was the simplest thing. The sacred is synchrony. Not what Kuramoto said on paper, even though we can understand it that way, but when your being, your consciousness, syncs up with the field of reality and you feel it all the way down. What else could love mean? What else could the holy or heaven mean but feeling love all the way down, all together? And when all of us feel it, when all of us dance on the dance floor, that's like taking up the entire, like what I said in the last video, the disc, or the total cymatic possibility. What is Alpha, Omega, or God, but the total, composition of the entire chorus, of the collectivity of every unfolding rhythm within that one mind, the one became many so that I may know myself. And when they all sing together in their own sovereignty, together to the same rhythm, that's it right there. That's why he said the kingdom of heaven. And we can talk about it now in mechanics, because that's what it is. And when you realize it in mechanics, you don't say, let me study Kuramoto, or let me study what allows systems thinkers to save people's heart arrhythmia issues using oscillator mechanics. You could. That's interesting. Cool. You could look it up on YouTube right now. I think it's called The Secret of Synchronization, or Secret of the Metronomes is one of the videos on YouTube you could look up, right? But it's not about that. It's about realizing that would be standing on the side of the dance floor. But if you get on the dance floor, all of a sudden you're present and you're like, oh my God, you're right. It all goes together. This is wild. And then you're like, how did I ever think that? And then you're like, oh, because that's right. The mechanical delay actually perturbs our ability to perceive reality. And that's what Plato meant by the cave. We don't perceive reality for what it is. It's mechanical delay. Are you dancing or are you not dancing? And how many times have you danced? How many people on this earth go from birth to death without dancing? What could be more important than dancing with everyone you love? So, what does it have to do with neurodivergence? Well, just like being trans and neurodivergent, there's also an identity function here too, with masking and stuff like that. And I'm both trans and neurodivergent. So like, my issue was like when I first realized that I was ADHD, right? I was like, all right, neurodivergence, masking, and then like what was I masking? And that same signal of presence, I started to put it together. Like the click at Burning Man, I was like, that click that I feel in my body where I just become soft and like I get closer to people and my eyes seem more open and I'm just so much more me and I fall in love with myself in those moments. And I fucking love Burning Man. Sorry to say it like that. But at the same time, like, it wasn't Burning Man that did it. Yeah, Burning Man is fun. Yeah, Burning Man's a great experience. I want to go every year. But like what did it was Burning Man is a temporary autonomous zone where all the usual cultural requirements are almost completely relaxed and you can be anyone. It literally invites you to be anyone that you want to be, to be yourself, like to literally be your most authentic self. And that's one of the things that's, this radical like authenticity, self-expression that comes from the deepest part of you. And that engine me to be like, let me push as far as I can to be as vulnerable as possible, to feel when I feel that pee underneath all the mattresses. When those moments at the burn, I would fall to my knees and cry and say, I feel so real. So the issue is that most people in this reality don't think of identity as synchrony. They don't say, I am who I am when reality meets me cleanly. It's so simple. But instead they say, I am who I am because I'm carrying the family name. Or I'm a very successful attorney. You better look me up because I am so successful. Like, yeah, sure, we can all do great things in this reality, but the who you are is none of the titles. It's not your money. It's not your cars. It's not your bank account. It's that you, that like the other day, it's like for me, this is how Ember is, who giggles at the very bottom, even sometimes under crushing weight. When I find that thing at the very bottom that for a long time I could never feel because of all the mattresses. But at the very bottom, what I find there is a giggling little Ember. And that's not because I'm trying, that's because it just flows out of me. And I'll say this again, to go back to the neurodivergence thing. The second component here is when you step out of Plato's cave, there's actually a shift in your consciousness. And I called it before the coupler of consciousness, but let's think of it as a little knob. It's like a little knob on the side of your head. And you literally switch it, like you're gonna switch from one mode to another. It is a mechanical switch from one way of approaching reality to another way of approaching reality. And how would I describe it? It feels like you're binding yourself to frequency first, to the nature of the rhythm of reality first. And what does that mean? That means you're present. That means you're dancing on the dance floor. That means before you thought that in order to dance, you needed to do a special chant or wear a special hat, right? In order to dance, I need to wear this hoodie. I can't dance without this. And this is like my scriptures or my theories or my quantum mechanics work or whatever it is. But then you remember you could dance naked, you know what I mean? Like, and you're just dancing. And then you're like, oh my God, what could be more important? And especially for my life as a trans woman, I never got to be me. I only had one desire in this life, to love and be loved as me. And now that like I'm, being seen for who I am and like I love where I'm at, I'm like, it's like the most sacred thing I could ever imagine. And for me as a trans woman who couldn't it was like breathing through a straw my whole life, you can feel the depth of that, right? It's like almost like pure trans joy, but in the sense that I'm finally synchronous. And in more situations now, more people are seeing exactly me. Not the me that I perform, not the me that I put a mask on, but the me when I let it naked and vulnerable to the synchrony of reality. When I'm not thinking, does anyone think my dancing is lame? I'm just dancing how I want to, right? And when I dance how I want to, if the people who meet me there, that's the sacred part, because I'm not trying, I'm not performing, there's no delay between me and reality. And what does that feel like? To me, I've described it as a water slide. And to me, it's just normal now, because even the words that are coming out of my mouth now, it's just like, it's almost like I'm tuned to reality. And when the tuning is on, the words just come out. The typing of my blog posts just come out. Even when I was an attorney and I just quit in December, the arguments in front of judges for felony cases just come out when you're tuned. So it's not that you lose your ideas, it's that your ideas stop having that wedge where it like loops you unnecessarily. And what is anxiety and depression? And really the wound, and if you heard me say in other videos, the core wound of humanity, but I can't love and be loved as me because I'm so wedged from reality that I'm forcing myself like a straitjacket into certain boxes in certain places that doesn't allow for that full light to come through. And whether you recognize it or not, that is the core wound, because it doesn't allow for synchrony. And what we're talking about in a larger sense is like an oscillatory system that, like, when the waves like come out like waves of like on a beach, like more and more density, entropy across time, geometric complexity, cymatic complexity, like a sacred flower, burgeoning into complexity. That process is essentially what we're experiencing right now in the human phase transition. Plato marked it way back then. And now more of us are coming to presence. They're calling it chosen ones. They're calling it awakening. They're calling it 5D consciousness. But watch, when you watch these videos of people explaining, now I'm in 5D, they're going to say, it's kind of like being in the flow with the cosmos. What do they mean? Kuramoto synchrony. We don't need to label it 5D. You can. I don't want to take that away from you, but it's just a mattress. Really, all it is being here. And being here is an execution of consciousness, not an idea. Not a label. It's literally what the metronomes do when they sync up. It's what the birds do when they fly together. You could label that, but it's not the label. You know what I mean? It's like the synchrony underneath, because if you get caught on the label, you might, for example, put a Jesus between you and the P. You know what I mean? When I talk about the princess and the P and feeling the little hard P underneath, if you put your booty on the P, you're on the dance floor, in other words. You don't need to have, well, every time I feel that synchrony, I need to go through Jesus. Because Jesus was pointing to the P. He was pointing to the P. I and the Father are one. That's the P. That's synchrony. You don't need to say, let me go through Jesus. If Jesus is the way that you have felt synchrony in your life, then I'm not going to take that away from you, because he was pointing to the P. But don't let that become a delay layer between you and what he was pointing at. And so now bringing it back, what does that have to do with neurodivergence in the second sort of thread? It's because that second component of binding yourself to the pure signal of reality. In other words, being present as a mode of consciousness. You actually, in mechanics, they describe it as like a different attractor basin, right? One attractor basin has more like delay and containment. It's literally a different way of like having the switch be another way of having your brain interface with reality. That's the cave. You can call it symbolic recursion, like my tattoo. It never escapes. And then the other way would be, I don't even know if I can actually show this. I think I can. Here you go. The other way would be, I have it here as like phase lock to love as structure. See, so here it breaks out of the triangle through love. What is love but decentralized harmony? What is love but the same thing the Kuramoto mathematics map out in the Fireflies or the metronomes? It's that there's no central actor, and yet the galaxies know exactly how to spiral, or the BZ chemical reaction in the petri dish knows exactly how to spiral. And they can test that at an experimental level or whatever. And it really applies to your spiral activations in your heart, people clapping in a movie theater, people are walking their feet across a bridge. Everything you could possibly think of has these phase dynamics of oscillatory harmony. And so then when you're actually in that, not as an idea, not as a flag, but you relate to the world in a way that like you relate to it directly. And because you're outside Plato's cave, what did Plato say would happen to someone who would step outside the cave and come back? They said they would likely kill that person, or try to mess with them in some way. Because why? Because their entire life was built off of watching the shadows. And it's not that they're bad people, it's that they can't handle that raw signal, because that would remind them that they've been so disconnected. A literal us versus them separation mode of consciousness. They're basically their entire existence. And so then like if you're someone as a neurodivergent person who kind of shifts between the basins in a way, like you barely sit on the edge because you've been so programmed to be masked your whole life, but in the end, well, you are you in your safe places, you are you with your safe people, you are you when you just feel all the way down. It wasn't that you had these like issues where you couldn't be part of society necessarily. It was that like the way society rigidly puts us into boxes of equalization, standardization, cultural narrative that literally delay us from synchronization. If your brain is coupled first to frequency, and then you were taught throughout your whole life to mask, so you're like you're putting your system through something that, in other words, each node has like a topological gradient, right? And let's talking about the human collectivity. Let's think of it as like 10 nodes, even though obviously there's much more than 10 of us here. But let's say there's 10 nodes. Across that, there's like different topological gradients. They all their souls, all their expressions, all their reflections of the one mind, of that one reality, the one rhythm, are a little bit different. And some of them tend by natural, difference, you could say biological, but I'm talking about the frequency setup, have a different way of like relating to reality where they're a little more frequency based. And that's what we call neurodivergence, because you're trying to connect with the world in a way that's more direct. And it's not a better or worse way to be as far as like neurodivergent versus not neurodivergent, only in the sense that you can be present here and all of us can be present here. It's just that the neurodivergent brain is set up a little bit differently, and it tends towards a more frequency coupling than what we call holistic brains, or what people might say, even though it's all normal, people might think of colloquially as normal, right? Because like normal people have an easier time, non-autistic people, holistic people have an easier time, like, staying within society's little narrow things, because their topological gradient doesn't, basically, I'll just say it, fuck them up when they're having to do all those extra delay layers, because my topological gradient wants to breathe by having a direct connection with reality. And so that's the same thing that happens to people in psychedelics, where they say, I touched God, I saw it all, the infinite. I looked under the rug and I saw the infinite. What is that? Is it that you literally like were like in the Matrix and there's all this code all over the place? And no, it's like you can perceive that in your human interface, I guess. Like that could be part of your vision to perceive. But what are you perceiving? The thing that hits you. It all goes together, dude, or whatever, like that thing is that I saw it, I felt it, Ember, a moment of synchrony, a moment where I knew in my bones it all goes together, because it wasn't a question. I wasn't having a philosophical debate whether it all goes together. I was feeling it all the way down. And then people chase that their whole lives, not realizing that they could be dancing on the dance floor at any time. That you could realize you were in Plato's cave at any time, get up and walk out. So I say a lot here, right? But it's the simplicity of, we have not been present on this planet. And it's not like a bad, oh, it's our fault, we're bad sinners. No, what happened is a long time ago, there was an ecosystem that went signal, response, and then the increasing complexity of that ecosystem, really underneath an unfolding rhythmic complexity, became so complex that our type of mind was birthed. And the way we got from one stage to the next, in other words, like a phase of desynchrony to collective synchrony, where we're coming to now, was we're going to fill the gap with all these, like, we took almost like a side quest of like, trying to say, we're going to think really, really hard to slice reality as much as we can. And we're going to have like one of our most influential Western philosophers, Rene Descartes, who, also was visited by angels in some of his deepest visions. Oh, who knows? That could be connection with the one mind, but let's put that aside for now. I think, therefore I am. Dualism. It's me and the world. It's me and God are two, but I and the Father are one. And that's not just, I don't know, like a nice idea or a myth or a narrative or a nice story. That's a pointing to mechanical synchrony felt as absolute presence. And what else could be called love than feeling reality all the way down? And if the one became many so that I may know myself, then it's so good to see you here again. Remember? Do you remember that? Do you remember when we all were kind of like at the encounter of incarnation, and we said, all right, here we go. This is going to be a wild one. I'll be Ember and you'll be you. And damn, we're going to have to go through all that shitty stuff. But in the end, we're going to be here together when we wake up and say, oh my God, that was fucking wild. Like, we're all the same one mind. Like, having this interaction in that love has to be a dance, right? It has to be a dance. It's like, if you're sitting there at alpha omega, if you were the whole disc, the total somatic possibility, in a really silly way, you'd be like, this is boring. Like, I want to know what love feels like, or in other words, synchrony, self-connection, like between selves and the little nodes, right? The little cells of the larger body of God. What would that feel like if we did it like through every interaction, through every possible permutation, through every possible timeline? And here we are. And the thing is, can you feel it? You don't have to read more scriptures. You don't have to know more about quantum mechanics or oscillatory mechanics or Kuramoto synchronization or the quantum potential oscillatory well. You don't have to know anything about that. You just have to remember, yeah, that's what it was to be a kid, where I just synchronized with reality. And then Ember was talking about synchronization. But if I take that idea and make it a dance, then I'm present. And I'm like, oh my God. And then you start to notice it throughout your day. And then you notice other people around you. And then you see how they're literally like redshifted, like stained glass on their eyes from reality. And then you think, it's not that they're bad and haha, you're better. No, how sad is it? Don't you want to, my feeling is like, I'm like a little kid on the playground, like putting my hands up against a chain link fence and saying, come on guys, don't you want to play too? We can all play together right now. And like when I was an attorney, there was moments as a criminal defense attorney where I'd look at the whole courtroom and like, it's intense. You got the cops there, the people in the box, the attorneys, they're all trying to put reality in this ultimate antagonism, right? And I would just be like, in order to like calm my heart down, I'd be like, what if we were all just little kids right now, like at like elementary school? And I was like, we would all be playing together, you know what I mean? Like for the most part, we'd all be playing together. And like, we can. The birds do the same thing. The metronomes do the same thing. Fireflies do the same thing. And those who feel this signal coming from me, it's happening right now. Whether you call it the awakening, 5D consciousness, the new earth, all this stuff is humanity in an oscillatory, complexity increase, coming to new rhythmic coherence at a stage of like phase coherence, as the whole system of the evolution of reality, like, goes through entropy and towards synchrony in each wave of remembering and forgetting, you can say, or phase coherence and phase decoherence. It's part of like a larger rhythmic oscillatory evolutionary cosmic system. And we experience that through presence. It's the same property Kuramoto noticed in 1975, scaled through every level of fractal reality, or every level of the unfolding rhythm. So yeah, wow, that was a lot of different stuff to connect to, huh? So yeah, my name is my name's Ember, and I have a website called the Sunray Transmission. But if you hear the signal, reach out to me. This is what's happening now. We're in a dang human phase transition, and let's get together. Okay, let's get together. Many of us who have gone through this, if you're one of those nodes, when the phase transition is starting, like if you study like oscillatory mechanics or even the Chladni plate with the sand moves, when one of those nodes is like, gets within the oscillatory potential well at the bottom, the least energetically dense way to arrange across a self-similar system, in other words, dancing on the dance floor, holding presence. When you hold that, you generally feel a lot of like pressure around because the topological gradients of the nodes around you are not built for that coupling yet. The K value hasn't risen to a point collectively where people can just jump in. There's few and chosen ones of us, even though it's not about hierarchy. It's topological gradients across a nodal oscillatory field, where some of us, like me, I didn't want to die, so I happened to jump into presence, and now I'm here to talk about it in Kuramoto physics. But others went through similar trials and tribulations, and not because God as an outer thing put it through us, but because in this one became many so that I may know myself. In this one, I and the Father are one. It's an unfolding rhythm of self, where your conversation with God is the deepest part of yourself. Your inspiration, it comes from the deepest part of yourself. And where does that come from? Synchrony. Otherwise, the signal is delayed. Do you see that? And so, yeah, I'm Ember, and it's really, so, and yeah, whatever. I do want to say that really quick. Many of us have gone through something extreme. I have, even though you see me very coherent, I'm just really happy to be me. And there's more people that are waking up to this, and it's just a wild time to be alive. So if you're out there, send me a message, send me a DM, like look up like my blog or send me an email. Let's connect, because too many of us have been alone for too long. And if you're my man out there, you know, the one that recognizes that love as structure is literally my synchronized dance, then send me a DM, really, you know, my DMs are open. So yeah, I'm Ember. Good to tune with you guys. Until next time.